Have you ever wondered how this firmware transfer machine actually works? Let me tell you all about the details. Hey guys, it's Tweety Expert here, ready to tell you about this firmware transfer machine and all of the specific details along with it. Of course, I have my assistant Katana. Sorry to wake you. But time to tell you about this machine. I've gone over all the general details of firmware in a previous video, but this video is going to be going over the specifics of the machine and transferring limitations. You'll only be able to access the transfer machine after you finish the campaign. Part of the endgame main mission part is just going to give you a quest in order to use this machine, and then after that point, you can use it whenever you want. So as you open up the machine, it's going to give you an option to go from firmware to gear. The first thing that you put into the machine is going to be the firmware that you want to transfer onto something. So the best firmware that you have that you want onto something else. So if I swap to something else, like this ordnance has a God Killer on it. If I equip that, I can only transfer God Killer onto other ordnances. So it can be grenades, it doesn't matter what specific type, but in the specific ordnance spot, I can only transfer God Killer onto another ordnance. So if I want to put God Killer onto this grenade, it has nothing right now, but it's going to create a new item, technically, where that item has God Killer on it. Now, as alerted at the bottom here, this item will be destroyed after transfer. This item is going to be gone. The firmware is going to be plucked out of it and plopped onto the specific ordnance. So let's transfer that item now. And you're going to hit continue. So we've now created this grenade ordnance and it has God Killer on there when initially it had nothing. Now this does create some sort of limitations because if we take a look at it, if you look at the item card, you can see on the firmware itself, it has a lock. This lock prevents this firmware from being transferred onto anything else. So if we try to click that ordnance that we just transferred, you cannot use it. But that specific ordnance can be applied with other ordnances. That item can no longer take this firmware and place it onto something else because that firmware is physically stuck on that item and has that lock on it. Now it will tell you this firmware will be replaced after transfer. So this will also just be gone. But in this instance, we're going to take God Killer, which we've already placed on this throwing knife, and replace it with I don't know how you say this one, but with goo. So although the output is kind of janked here, so if you see it has God Killer on the output visual, but if you hover over it, it's the new firmware. It's a little bit visually janked, but if we transfer it, we can see it updates. What? Now even I'm confused. I mean, look back at it. It still has God Killer. Like if we put airstrike onto that same grenade, it's gonna have the one we tried to initially transfer? Maybe? So it's kind of broken on how you do it. Let's do a different example. So this is just a visual glitch. If you look at the item, it will have the old one on it. But if you look on the left side by all of the firmware bonuses, you can see that the airstrike that I put on the weapon, but it's not showing on the knife, is actually applying as it should be. So you still get the bonuses and buffs, it just visually is kind of broken and a little bit flawed. So the first time you transfer, it's going to be fine. It's going to take the firmware that is on the specific one in the firmware slot and apply it like a sticker onto this one. Rubber Band Man is now gone. It takes this, and puts them together. And if we transfer it, everything should be totally fine. Keep in mind, the iridium cost slowly does inch up the more that you use this machine. But overall, unless you're really hurting for iridium, it shouldn't make too big of a dent. So let's continue and put Gadget Ahoy onto this specific rep kit. And now, Gadget Ahoy is on that rep kit. Now, let's test it again and try a different type of firmware onto that Gadget Ahoy. This one has Real Big Fist, and we'll put it right back onto the one that we created for Gadget Ahoy. This one visually works where this firmware will be gone and it will be replaced by the Real Big Fist, which works out. So this rep kit is going to have this firmware applied. Although this item is technically locked, it can still have other things applied onto it. So this Gadget Ahoy is literally going to be stuck on this item till it dies. That, or you replace the firmware on it. Let's try something with the shields. So this one has Atlas EX. Atlas EX is, if you watched the previous video, a specific one stuck to UVH levels. Only really benefiting Atlas, but the initial stuff can have little bonuses that you can put onto your classes. And let's say we want to put Atlas onto this Fireworks. The Fireworks doesn't have a firmware, so it's not like it's going to disappear. And this shield will go away, and it will put Atlas onto the shield. This shield has God Killer, and we'll put our other one on there. So this one applies correctly. Even though this is locked by the icon, you can still take this God Killer and apply it on. This firmware will disappear. As we know, anything that has this caution will be gone and just disappear, as these two are just combining into one item. You just have to make sure that this firmware that we want to apply on is from a shield, so we have to find another shield that we actually want to use and use as our build so we can apply that firmware. So you get to the point where you have like an amazing shield that you have that just doesn't have the right firmware, and you'll have to farm firmware on a shield or whatever it might be in order to be able to transfer it properly. Yeah, I guess I just bugged this weapon out. I guess, because it's okay. But yeah, I guess besides a little bit of bugs and stuff to keep in mind of, it seems to always change into something that it outputs on. I didn't know that was bugged out, but it's something I could definitely bring up to the devs. But yeah, in general, find whatever piece of gear that you want to be using for your build. Have something that is the same type of gear, so shield to shield, rep kit to rep kit, and make sure that firmware is something that you want to take off of that weapon and apply it onto the other. I know there was a lot of problems with people understanding how the things exactly transfer, and you're not limited to, if that item was transferred, it's not dead in the water. You just cannot take that firmware off of it. It's stuck on that item, and you can always apply some other firmware on top of it. So if that gear piece is like, oh, this is really good, and you put a firmware on it, and you want to change builds, but that shield still applies onto the build that you're using, you can take another piece of firmware and apply it on top of it and change it out. It just cannot be taken off of that item. But I hope you understand. I didn't know things were bugged out until now, so that was a science experiment for all of us. And as always, tweet, see ya.